Coach Brandon here today. We're going to go ahead and talk about some of the validation behind this hypertrophy-based program that I've developed. Now, first and foremost, I want to cover the basic structure of this program. You'll notice it's split into upper body and lower body days. On Monday and Thursday, it's very much upper body based, and on Tuesday and Friday, it's very much lower body based, with the fifth and final day focusing on arms. Training blocks are going to last anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks, 4 weeks on average, and across training blocks, you're not going to see any massive differences within exercise selection or volume. We'll mainly be focusing on getting into progressive overload by increasing intensity and progressing load on a week-to-week basis, which you'll see reflected within the intensity ratings as they go lower and lower. The reps are observed rather going lower and lower, indicating a higher intensity. Now, one of the big things you'll notice upon looking at this, though, is that it's not necessarily the kind of structure you'll see within a normal stereotypical hypertrophy-based program. The reason why is because within stereotypical hypertrophy-based programs, I see a lot of mistakes. I see oftentimes people really focusing on one or two of the most important aspects of hypertrophy, but not taking advantage of the totality of what research says is the most important things to work on. So, according to the current consensus of research, there is 4 things that are the most important within facilitating hypertrophy. And in order, those are mechanical tension, volume, intensity, and range of motion. These are the 4 most important things in facilitating hypertrophy, and a lot of stereotypical programs out there really focused on 1 or 2. The most common one focused on is volume. People love to give massive amounts of volume for every single exercise, and it feels like good hypertrophy work. You're getting a lot of cell swelling, getting a really good pump, but again, we should be focusing on the other ones as well, because each one of these really important factors takes advantage of, some of which actually different pathways even, of facilitating hypertrophy. So, first and foremost, what you'll notice when looking at this is that we have sets of 7 here. So for example, squat, bench press, deadlift, we have some sets of 7, we have some sets of 10. These really aren't stereotypical hypertrophy numbers, but the reason that they're there is because we really want to allow somebody to take advantage of the first and most important aspect in facilitating hypertrophy, which is mechanical tension. You'll also see some things such as hamstring curls to failure, 20 to 30 reps. You'll see some of the leg press variations and other things of that nature that are much, much higher rep ranges, getting into the teens or 20s or 30s even sometimes. And what these are there for is to facilitate a lot of cell swelling, a lot of metabolite accumulation. And what this does is provides different pathways for hypertrophy. And you'll also see a lot of exercise on here that are extremely intense. They are to failure kinds of exercises, which again takes advantage of another pathway. So there's multiple different pathways of hypertrophy, and we should be trying to take advantage of each and every one of them to stimulate hypertrophy in the most optimal way possible. But stereotypical programs out there really only focus on 1 or 2. So that's really what sets this program apart, is we're looking at the consensus of research and we're putting together a program that's trying to take advantage of the totality of pathways we can facilitate hypertrophy and pay attention to the current status of research. Now, another thing worth noting here is that we're not jumping headfirst into massive amounts of volume. The reason why is because we have to understand that adaptation and recovery actually kind of compete with one another. They take from the exact same resources within your body. So what we have to understand is when we jump headfirst into a really intense program with a ton of volume, but we're not adapted to that yet, what ends up happening is we experience a surplus in muscle damage, and from that, we use all of our body's resources towards recovery and have none left for adaptation. And adaptation is kind of the whole point of doing this. So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and go with rep ranges that aren't too crazy high, nor intensities, nor mechanical tension, nor range of motion. But over time, we're going to facilitate progressive overload by slowly increasing these facets of hypertrophy. So for example, in the next training block, what you're going to see is you're going to see a much larger range of motion virtually across the board with a lot of the main movements. You'll also see some steady increases within volume as well. So these numbers will change over time to facilitate progressive overload, to facilitate adaptations. So it'll look a little bit more like that stereotypical hypertrophy program with time in terms of a lot of exercise with higher volume, a few more exercises with drop sets, with 2 failure sets and other things of that nature as we become more and more adapted to this kind of training. In that way, as our stimulus threshold actually moves up, we adapt to that by increasing these important facets of hypertrophy. So one of the big things, I want to recap here, is that this program is a little different than the average program. And that is because we're really focusing on taking advantage of each a very important pathway and facet of hypertrophy by paying attention to the current status of research and using that information as a guide to actually create training. You will get the opportunity to actually handle some good loads that will take advantage of the most important facet, which is mechanical tension. We'll get in plenty of volume, which will definitely increase over time. We'll get plenty of very high intensity training, leaving you with very few or no reps in reserve. And then lastly, we're going to go ahead and make changes to this program where we increase range of motion over time by including specialty barbells that increase the range of motion of pressing or deficit deadlifts and other things of this nature to achieve progressive overload and get you a hell of a lot stronger, but more importantly, bigger.